Hey folks, Neal here. This is a long one, so we made the decision to split it in half. Please enjoy the first half of our discussion on the film Alien from 1979, a movie that, it turns out, pretty fucking good. So let's just get right into it. I don't have a bit. I think that we should just kind of get into this one. This is a big one.
Yeah, it's how should I phrase this? Yes, you're right, it's definitely a big one, but it may be the biggest one.
Sure, that's certainly the most important film in this franchise, right?
I mean, the only other one that could give it a run for its money would be the second one, but there wouldn't be a second one if it wasn't for this. So,
Yes, of course, audiences, we are talking about Alien versus Predator.
Requiem.
Well, that's the second one. That's the one that's almost as good. Almost as
Fair
important.
enough, fair enough. You've got me there. Fair enough. I kind of lost track of my own bit there for a second.
We're talking about Alien. We're talking about 1979's Alien. Welcome to Crew Expendable. I am fossilized remains of an ancient alien race, Hallstrom.
And I am Ship's Cat Rohrbacher.
Nice. I like it. That's a good one.
The other one on my list was going to be engineering technician, but I thought Ship's Cat was funnier.
Ship's Cat is funnier. And you may have noticed, diehard fans in the chat, that we're going by last names now in our designations, because that's what they do in this movie and the next movie, and I'm pretty sure all the rest of the series, and also the movies we already watched. So we're switching it up. We're getting authentic with it finally. We're just a couple of truckers in space hauling 20 million tons of ore through Zeta 2 Reticuli system back to Earth of the Alien franchise.
Love it. Flawless.
I'm just excited to talk about this movie, dude.
Well, here I'll give you guys, well, both you, Neal, and the listeners, a little bit of a spoiler for this. I'm excited too because this movie fucking rules and is really good, and I love it.
What if we came on here and we were like, it's all right. It's not Covenant, but it's okay.
It's not Covenant. Well, it certainly isn't Covenant. I'll give it that.
It is so not Covenant that
Yeah.
we watching these in the order that we've decided to watch them in a timeline chronological order as opposed to release date order. Going from Alien Covenant to this is just insanity.
Yeah, dude, it is wild that, I was going to say that the people that made Covenant, then I remember that that's the same person that made this movie.
Yeah.
But, it's wild that, Ridley Scott looked at the original Alien movie and then was like, what would be a good transition point, and what would be a movie that would be just as high quality and made well and tonally consistent to the original that the original one is. Let's make a movie that is in every way effectively completely different.
Do you think he thought Covenant was going to have the effect on cinema as a whole that this movie had?
I think
do you think he sat back in his chair, watched the final cut of Covenant, and was like, fucking nailed it again, a third time, out of the park?
I don't know if he thought that for Covenant, but I do think he thought that while he was making Prometheus.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird transition going from those to this, right?
I mean, in a vacuum, Covenant generally works pretty well as a movie, but viewed as the immediate timeline point before this one, they couldn't be any more different.
They couldn't be any more different. No. Also, listeners, you might hear I've got a little bit of a throat congestion thing going on. We're just gonna power through. We're just gonna deal with it. It's fine. We just gotta roll with it.
That's right. It's fine.
So Ridley Scott directs Alien, and then 30 years later or whatever, he directs Prometheus and Covenant. And we have now watched these three films essentially back to back. Space between, right? But
yeah,
they don't even feel like part of the same universe. Ultimately.
They really don't. No,
they
really don't.
Thematic connections, despite visual connections, it just doesn't feel. And that's the thing, is I am remembering now, it wasn't that long ago that I've also watched the other movies,
Mhm.
Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection. I've watched all of those recently since the launch of the show,
All
just
right.
just to get my bearings because I haven't watched a lot of them in a long time. They all
Mhm.
are going to feel extremely different than this movie too. It is weird watching this one. This one feels like such a strong outlier to me. Like none of the sequels or prequels are able to recapture this film.
They don't get it, you know?
There's stuff that's similar, but like even the alien, like we'll get into it deeper, like the xenomorph creature itself feels like a completely different creature than any of the ones we see in the other movies.
Yeah.
Like just in
Correct.
terms of attitude, I guess. I don't even know. It feels like a strange movie in the context of the entire franchise, but also the best one out of all of them, right?
Yes, it is absolutely, like, I'm going on record right now, the original Alien movie is the best movie in the series.
We might need to do like 17 episodes just talking about Alien just over the course of this show in
Oh,
general.
yeah, I mean, this is a movie we could just keep coming back to over and over and over again. Like, there is so much to say, regardless of what, all we get around to saying in this episode, we could do another 3 episodes, like, in a row right after this one, just continuing to talk about this movie.
We could, but we're not going to. Yet. We're going to spread it out.
Yeah,
We got to spread the Alien
correct.
love out. Also, we watched the theatrical cut. This is a conversation about the theatrical cut of the film, not the
Correct.
director's cut. We
Correct.
will talk about director's cut stuff later on a future episode down the line when we feel like doing a revisit. And I think that's the time to lump in conversations about deleted scenes and stuff because there are deleted scenes out there for this movie that we can watch. I
Yeah.
don't remember like which parts in the deleted scenes ended up in the director's cut, and I believe that there are certain scenes that were maybe removed to keep the pacing for the director's cut.
Yeah, I think what it is they added just like a couple of new scenes, but the director's cut version of this movie ends up being a little bit shorter because he realized that like adding those extra scenes made the movie like take too long and like fucked with the pacing enough,
Hmm.
or he like went back and like removed a couple like expository or like slow pan scenes, sped a couple of things up earlier on in the movie so
Okay,
that the overall movie ends up being slightly shorter. But
right,
that's just because, like I said, all the stuff they cut out was just like, additional mood set pieces and things like that. So,
right. So it's like a true director's cut, like a Blade Runner director's cut. It's not like an unrated extended edition American
correct.
Pie 2 DVD, right?
That
Like,
being said, Ridley Scott has gone on record saying that the original theatrical cut of the movie
uh huh.
is his preferred version of the movie.
Okay, I can see that.
So, yeah,
It's really fucking good.
it's
So
real fucking good, dog. It
yeah,
is so good. This movie rips so hard. I love it
yeah.
every time I watch it.
And it's still scary. Like I'm not going
Yeah.
to speak for you. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but like maybe it's still tied to the moment I saw it as a child when I was probably too young to be watching it. It still fucking scares me. In fact, this again not a conversation about the director's cut, but some years ago when the director's cut was released, it played in theaters, and I ended up going to see it at like an AMC theater on like a Halloween night and still got scared even though I know the movie backwards and forwards seeing it like on the big screen. And I remember specifically it was when Dallas bites it in the vents.
That
Yeah.
is specifically the scene I was going to mention that I was like, yeah, like seeing this on the big screen, there's one specific shot that I can imagine in my head would
Yes.
still get to me, and it is fucking the scene, like you said, where Dallas gets killed. Ooh, man.
Where Dallas bites it in the vents. It still got me. Like absolutely.
Ooh.
And last night and the night before I've watched this movie twice in preparation for this. Gets me every time. And I know right where the scene is coming. I know exactly what's happening. There's still a part of me that's like, oh, good, he's going down the ladder. He's going to be safe, right? No, no, that was the mistake,
There's
dude. You were fine where you were.
Yeah, there's a couple of parts in this movie that, as mentioned, of course, I've seen it before a couple of times.
Sure.
But like there's a couple of parts in this movie that like I still kinda forgot, not so much what happened, but there were some specific details about how the scene operated
Right.
that I did kinda forget about. And then so when I was watching it in preparation for this, there were a couple of parts where I was like, "Oh shit, I fucking forgot that happened."
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's real good. I love it.
We can't just keep saying it's a good movie. We got to talk about it in a little bit more detail. And by we, of course, I mean me. I just keep saying, man, it's really good. It's a good movie. Because guess what? It's a fucking good movie. But let's dive into it a little deeper. Kitty Cat Kenny. So this movie was directed by Ridley Scott, as we said. The screenplay was written by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. I did a little bit of research. I watched part of a documentary I plan on finishing called Memory,
All right.
which is about the creation of Alien, sort of all of the pieces sort of coming together to make it happen. So just briefly, I don't want to dive into the documentary too deep, but just briefly, the documentary talked about how Dan O'Bannon had come off of Dark Star with John Carpenter, and he and John Carpenter had this kind of falling out about the movie where it was a science fiction comedy. Dark Star was where John Carpenter apparently didn't want to share credit with Dan O'Bannon, and Dan O'Bannon thought he sort of deserved more credit, for the way the movie turned out. It was a student production, I don't know that I've heard stories of John Carpenter being particularly a dick, so who knows what actually happened here. But
I hear you.
in any case, Dan O'Bannon decided to write his own science fiction script. And sometime after the failed Jodorowsky Dune picture that Dan O'Bannon was tapped to work on, like once that production sort of fell apart, he came back to the United States and started crashing with Ronald Shusett. And he showed Ronald Shusett this like partially written script that he had. He'd only gotten about 30 pages into a script for a movie called Memory.
Right.
And that first 30 pages allegedly is extremely similar to the first 30 minutes or so of Alien, down to distress beacon on the planet. And I guess the goal originally was something was going to happen to them on this planet that makes them all start losing their memories. He shifted the idea to some sort of alien creature, but he wasn't sure how he was going to get the alien creature on board to, terrorize them on the ship for the rest of the movie. And according to Ronald Shusett, Ronald Shusett, came up with the idea of the alien, like, 3-stage life cycle, right? He came to Dan O'Bannon and was like, they're going to encounter an alien and it's going to, these are his words basically, going to fuck. The alien's going to fuck. It's going to latch onto their face and it's going to plant something inside them, plant its seed inside them. And that's how it's going to get the alien back on board the ship. I think there's credit to it. I mean, it seems like a very well-researched documentary. H.R. Giger's wife appears in it. I think he had passed away. Well, yeah, but there's archive footage of him talking. There's archive footage of Dan O'Bannon. Dan O'Bannon's wife is present in the documentary. So I think that it's probably a reliable source that Ron Shusett had a lot more to do with the alien creature as we see it than we really sort of recognized. Because I've certainly, mostly in talking about this movie, discussed Dan O'Bannon as opposed to Ron Shusett. And I just want to make sure Ron Shusett's getting credit where credit's due. So anyway, yeah, just wanted to put that out there. I think that the script is the reason why this movie largely is so successful. I mean, the creature design, obviously super important. And it was Dan O'Bannon, again, who was trying to pull in H.R. Giger, who he had met working on the failed Dune movie. That's obviously very integral to the film as well. But I really think that the reason that this movie, this small story, works so well is because of the script.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, it takes a lot. We've got to get good set designers, good creature designers, a really good cast. All of that stuff all came together in the end to make easily one of the best movies of all time.
Hard agree on that one, yes.
Should we do a summary? I'm sorry, we're a little bit all over the place with this one, and it's my fault. Do we want to do a summary of what happens in this film?
Sure, I actually have one, so.
Okay, do you want to read it?
Sure. A mining and towing vessel on the way back to Earth picks up a side quest to investigate a distress signal. Unfortunately, it doesn't take long until the crew is wishing they were the ones that sent the distress signal. Because a whole series of iconic tragedies happen to them in very quick succession, including but not limited to a new type of breathing mask, an exploding torso, a skull shaped like a penis, and 2 different cat-based jump scares.
a new type of breathing mask?
Yes,
Are you talking about the face hugger?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the movie Alien. If you're listening to this without watching the movie, go watch the movie. It's on Hulu. But spend the money. Go buy it. It's good. You'll enjoy it. Watch either cut. They're both good.
When I watched it, I busted out my Blu-ray copy of the Alien anthology, and
Nice.
so it was nice and crisp and looked good, and I didn't even need to use the internet because I wasn't streaming it, so I could pause it and switch back and come back to it whenever I wanted.
Nice.
I highly recommend buying it.
I attempted to watch it on my Alien Quadrilogy DVD set,
Ooh,
but the old Xbox wouldn't read the disc.
lame.
So I had to boot up my digital copy. Fortunately, they give you an option to watch the theatrical cut, even though I bought the director's cut.
Mm-hmm.
In the extras on the Movies Anywhere app, I was able to select the theatrical cut.
Yeah, on mine, when I loaded up the main menu, they asked me which version of it was that I wanted to watch, and I was like, oh shit, I think we decided to watch the theatrical cut for all of these.
Yes.
Okay, got it, cool. So that's
Yep.
the one I watched too, so yeah.
We're doing standard editions for all of these. I am looking forward to watching these old DVD versions of like Aliens and Alien 3, you know?
I mean, I'm looking forward to when we get to the Alien 3 part of this,
Sure.
because as I've mentioned on a previous episode, I've only ever seen the assembly cut version of Alien 3. I've never seen the theatrical cut of it.
Okay.
So I'm interested in going back and watching the new, well, not the new version, the original version, but the version of the movie I've literally never seen before. I'm really looking forward to that.
I want to say I've seen Alien 3 theatrical cut maybe 3 or 4 times, and the assembly cut once or twice. And I remember liking the assembly cut more, but it's not a movie I go back to very often.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think I've only seen it maybe twice.
Weirdly, I've seen Alien Resurrection a bunch of times because I used to watch that a lot when I was in like middle school. I think it's just a movie that appeals to a middle schooler brain. That one.
I guess you were just a big fan of Ron Perlman back in the day.
Big Ron Perlman and Winona Ryder fan.
That's right.
But we're not talking about those movies. We're talking about Alien. And Kenny, what do you think about this? What do you think about this movie?
Well, as I don't think I've brought up yet so far, I think this
Sure.
movie is extremely good and
Yeah.
watchable and fun and worth the like 1 hour and 50 minutes it takes to get through it or whatever.
Yeah. It's a slow burn, man. That first half, not a whole lot's happening. Pardon me. A lot is happening, but not a whole lot of alien sci-fi action is happening, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Like we're getting a slice of life movie with an alien in it, you know? We're literally getting truckers in space.
Yeah, when I was watching this one, rewatching it for the show a couple of days ago, I actually had to watch it in 2 nights because, like I said, as mentioned in I think the previous episode, every like minute or two I have to like stop the movie to take notes, so it takes me way longer than the runtime of the movie to actually watch it. And I started the movie and then I got about halfway through it and I was like, I'm not going to have time to finish this tonight. I'm going to have to wait to finish it tomorrow.
Sure.
And so I was like, I'm going to stop at the halfway point of the movie and then just pick up from there. Right. And do you know what the scene at the halfway point of the movie is?
Is it when they're landing on, is it Kane waking up?
It's not quite. It is Kane eating dinner with the rest of the crew.
So immediately, so half the movie is
the halfway point of the movie is when the alien actually shows up, which means the first like 55 minutes of the movie is just chilling,
Yeah. So we get that first 30 pages, right, where they find the distress beacon, they land on the planetoid, right? Then we get about 20 or so minutes, right? 15 to 20 minutes of the face hugger, the discovery of, the acid blood and those things. And then we hit the halfway point with the creature actually loose on the ship.
Yep.
And
Kane
a hunt.
Kane doesn't look into the ovomorph and get the face hugger
Yeah,
until about 25 or 30 minutes into the movie.
right.
So yeah, it takes like almost a good half hour for an alien to even show up. And then it's another almost half hour of them just trying to figure out what the face hugger is. And then once the chestburster shows up, pretty much the entire movie after that is them running through the halls of the ship away from a gigantic murderous alien.
I timed that final section. We'll talk about it when we get further there. But you know how there's a 10-minute alarm and a 5-minute alarm? Yeah.
I do.
Doesn't really work out that way. If you time it.
I imagine, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. Do we just want to talk a little bit about like each part of this? Like we want to talk a little bit about the cast, a little bit about the sets, a little bit about the creature, just sort of go through it that way.
Whatever works for me. I guess we'll just see how the conversation pans out.
To attempt to give this some kind of a structure, because the cast is phenomenal, right?
Yeah. It's great.
I'm gonna run through it just real quick here. Obviously, Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, just credited as Ripley, like not even first names on any of these people.
Yeah,
right?
all of them are only credited by their last names.
Famously, everyone knows her most well-known role, of course, in Heartbreakers with Jennifer Love Hewitt. There we go. I'll just go with that credit.
Cool.
Obviously, it's Sigourney Weaver, right? Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Daredevil season 2, I think.
I believe she was in The Village, if I recall.
Galaxy Quest. I mean, the credits go on and on, right? She's a fantastic actor.
Yeah. If you're listening to this show, you fucking know who Sigourney Weaver is.
Right. And if you don't shut the podcast off, you don't deserve this. Tom Skerritt as Dallas. Now, I was talking to my friend Barrett last night, and I was like, okay, so I knew that there was a guy in Alien named Dallas, and I knew he was played by a guy named Tom Skerritt, but I did not connect that was the exact same Tom Skerritt that I knew as Viper in Top Gun. I don't know why. He looks so different in Alien versus in his later roles, like in Top Gun. Well, not later roles, but like in Top Gun and movies that I saw him in later on. But
well, I mean,
yeah.
Top Gun did come out after Alien, so it is a later role.
Right. Yeah, but like he doesn't look like the same human being.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
See, here's the thing. Like I am, of course, I know who Tom Skerritt is, of course.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
he's Dallas in Alien. But like, here's the thing. Like me, I don't watch a whole lot of movies. So
Sure.
Tom Skerritt was one of those dudes where it's like, I've heard the name around. I know who he is. I recognize that he's a famous actor. But like, honestly, Alien is the only thing that comes to mind when I think of him, and it might be the only thing he's been in that I've seen, but like I know he's a famous actor. I've heard his name, I recognize him. You know, I've seen him around. I just don't think I've ever watched anything else that he's actually in.
So you haven't seen the original Poison Ivy, not Poison Ivy New Seduction?
I have not, no.
Okay, with Drew Barrymore and Sarah Gilbert. You have not seen Poltergeist 3.
I have not.
You have not seen 6 episodes of Cheers that he was on.
I mean, I've seen some episodes of Cheers. I don't know if any of them were the ones he was on.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Fair. I can't pick out a ton of Tom Skerritt, but he's just a guy. Yeah, he's just a guy. You know who?
Yeah,
Tom
like I
Skerritt
said,
is.
he's a guy. I know I know who he is. I recognize him. I know his name. I couldn't really pinpoint anything other than this that I know him from, but like I know he's done other stuff, you know.
He was great in this. I really like Dallas as a character, a very cool character. You can tell he's the captain, right? You can tell he's in charge.
Yep.
Yeah, I dig him. John Hurt as Kane, the ill-fated crew member, second in command, we learn.
Yep.
Who has the first encounter with the face hugger and births, what does Ash call it? Kane's son later on.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Pretty intense writing there. And Kenny, you thought you weren't going to be able to talk about Hellboy on this podcast all that often, but of course, John Hurt was in the Hellboy movies.
Of course, baby. John Hurt played Professor Broom in the 2 Guillermo del Toro Hellboy movies.
Yeah, he did.
That's actually the primary thing I know him from, because I saw Hellboy before I saw Alien. So when I watched Alien, I was like, hey, look, it's Professor Broom.
Nice. He also plays himself, Or perhaps the same character in Spaceballs, recreating the very same chestburster scene.
Yeah, but in that one, doesn't it do like the whole Michigan J Frog
Yes.
thing or something? Yeah, I thought so.
Yes, in that one, the Xenomorph does a song and dance after it pops out of poor John Hurt.
It has been a long time since I've seen that movie, so yeah.
Yeah, turns out Spaceballs isn't that good.
Oh, okay. Fair enough, you know. That's how it goes.
Maybe that's a hot take, but Mel Brooks has better movies than that for sure.
I will agree to that. Yeah.
I know John Hurt. Well, I mean, again, another guy who's been in a lot of things. He pops up all the time. You see him and stuff. I remember him as the wartime doctor from Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I
that's
mean,
pretty cool.
I don't watch Doctor Who, but I was aware he was on it. So
yes. And he's also in V for Vendetta as Adam Sutler. Oh, the Harry Potter movies. He's the wand guy in the Harry Potter movies. I forgot about those. Fuck J.K. Rowling. Anyway, let's move on. John Hurt, also great in this. And it's fun to see all of these actors so young because, this movie was made in 1979, and it wasn't until the late 80s and early 90s that I started. I think it was about 1990, 91 probably when I first saw Alien. So I am, years away from this as I'm seeing these actors pop up in other stuff. It's just kind of a nice little time capsule. Anyway, Veronica Cartwright as Lambert. I, completely unrelated to this, for some reason the other night, Kenny, I decided to watch Scary Movie 2.
All right.
Because it was on HBO Max. Now, I'm not a scary movie, parody movie fan, but I was like, I kind of remember watching Scary Movie 2 on cable. I'm going to check this out. Opening scene of that, I think Andy Richter is there, and they're like rich old people, right? Like dinner party nonsense.
Yeah, I got you.
And the main host of the dinner party, Veronica Cartwright. Yeah.
That's fun.
They got a horror legend, Veronica Cartwright, to be in Scary Movie. She was also in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Yeah, wasn't she like the little girl in that movie or something?
I believe so. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, just the year before Alien came out.
Oh, is that the one with Donald Sutherland? I think it was.
That is, yeah. That's the Donald Sutherland, Leonard Nimoy one.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Good movie.
She's also on Chilling Adventures of Sabrina as the fortune teller in chapter 15, I guess, would that be season 1? Season 2, episode 4.
I wouldn't say, I think it's season 2 because I think each volume is like 10 episodes or something.
Yes, yeah. So another horror legend here, Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh.
Haven't seen it.
Veronica Cartwright.
Yep.
Harry Dean Stanton as Brett, another guy who's just been in absolutely everything. My touchstone for Harry Dean Stanton outside of Alien is, and this is a sentence that's not going to surprise anybody, Pretty in Pink.
That does not surprise me at all. You're correct.
love Pretty in Pink. That's a good movie. It's also in The Green Mile. Where did you first see Harry Dean Stanton?
I'm actually looking through his filmography right now, and the first thing I saw him in probably would have been Godfather Part 2, but he just plays a like bit part in that movie.
Sure.
So I wouldn't have recognized him in it.
Maybe Escape from New York.
Escape from New York, I would have recognized him from, but I don't think that was the first thing I saw him in.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm just going through here. It might have been The Green Mile.
Okay, that's a pretty big one. People have heard of that movie.
Yeah. It might have actually been The Green Mile. I mean, I've seen a few of these other things that he was also in. He was in Twister, for instance.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, probably the first one that I can recall seeing that he was like, a big enough of a deal in the movie to like be memorable that he was in it was probably Green Mile.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, he's a very long, impressive career.
Oh yeah, he's his first roles were in the late 50s.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
Ian Holm as Ash. Ian Holm, of course, Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. Oh, meant to mention, John Hurt voiced Aragorn in the Ralph Bakshi animated Lord of the Rings movie.
Nice.
Yeah, and then Ian Holm would later go on to star in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies, that I'm gonna say it borrowed a lot of scenes directly from that Ralph Bakshi version.
I haven't seen the Ralph Bakshi version. I've seen the live action ones a bunch of times, but I
Sure.
haven't seen the animated one from the 80s. So
Ian Holm also in The Fifth Element.
mm-hmm.
Something else. Something. He's got another like big. I guess I'm probably just thinking Lord of the Rings. That's like his big bust through role, right?
I mean, I would say that's a big one. Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I will say that is certainly the first time I had come across him,
Yeah.
because that movie came out when I was like 14. So it would be reasonable to believe that would be the first time I would have seen him, because like what 12-year-old is like, oh, I love Ian Holm, like I would have never heard of him before that. So
Right. Yaphet Kotto as Parker. Yaphet Kotto Kananga in Live and Let Die. Big James Bond villain.
That is primarily where I know him from. That's what I
Sure.
recognized him from. Yeah.
He's also in, I think it's Freddy's Dead. Yeah, Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. He's a doctor in that. That's not a very good Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and as I've said many times, not a big Freddy guy. I like the first four. They kind of fall apart after part 4.
That's how it goes,
Yaphet Kotto, a fantastic actor.
Yeah, he's great. He does a fucking phenomenal job in this movie too.
He's great in this. There's that story about how Ridley Scott told him to like actually sort of just keep antagonizing Sigourney Weaver even when they weren't like shooting, just like on the set, just to like keep the tension up between their relationship, because there's a lot of tension between the two of them in particular. Like
there sure is.
He's kind of got it with everybody, right? He's sort of just generally a bully in the movie, but in such a specifically believable way. Yeah, he's great in this. He's kind of a scene stealer in my opinion in a lot of his scenes. He pulls focus. I want to talk about him now because even though we're not going to talk about the creature until later, Balaji Badeo, who plays the alien, playing the alien is his only acting credit.
Mm-hmm.
He is a 6 foot, 10-inch tall person from Nigeria, a graphic designer and like a visual artist who somebody on the production saw him in a bar in Soho, right? Mm-hmm. And they were like, do you want to play the alien creature in this movie we're making? And he agreed. And he's not an actor. He's just a kind of a soft-spoken guy from all accounts of people on set, and he really didn't like being the focus in the way that he was. So they offered him roles in future Alien sequels, like to play the creature, Mm-hmm. And he turned them down, and he moved back to Nigeria, and he opened an art gallery. He just didn't want to be an actor, but he was the alien. He's the person who brought the creature to life,
Yeah, he's the alien. Yeah, I hear you.
It's very cool. So so the cast is great, right? So we've got our seven crew members, right? Ripley, Dallas, Kane, Lambert, Brett, Ash, and Parker. Mm-hmm. What are their roles? Ash is like the science officer, right?
I got him actually listed here. Ash is the science officer, yes.
Yeah.
Parker is the chief engineer, and Brett is just an engineer.
Right. He's his helper.
Dallas, of course, is the captain. As you said earlier, Kane is the second in command, or the XO, if you will.
Okay.
Ripley is, of course, famously the warrant officer.
Warrant officer Ripley.
And Lambert is the navigator.
Navigator, yes. And they all kind of seem like they're sick of working together a little bit, don't they?
They kind of do. They don't get along quite as well as you would have thought they would.
No, Dallas does his best, like keeping everybody together, right? But there's clearly like an issue Parker and Brett have with the pay structure, right? Because this is they're heading back with all of this ore, right? Mm-hmm. 20 million tons or something like that. Might be a larger number than that. Might be slightly smaller. I didn't count the zeros.
I think they say in the opening that it's 20 million, yeah.
Yeah. So they're expecting a big payday, and Parker and Brett are kind of upset that they're only getting half a share each. Like they have to split a share versus everybody else who gets a whole share. So, there's a lot of Parker being like, hey, we're not doing any more work unless we get a whole share. Hey, if we're setting out on this planet, they want to give us money, like we'll do it, but like there's just a whole lot of like we're not getting our fair share, and we're the engineers keeping this bucket of bolts running, And I
And
get it,
every
man.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense, but it's like it's funny to me because like one of the times they like corner Dallas and they're like, "Come on, man, you gotta fucking pay us more," and he's basically just like, "Look, it's not my fault you signed the
Right.
contract that said that's how much you were gonna get.
Yeah.
You wanted to get more, you should have negotiated for more on the contract that, again, to remind you, you already signed."
Yeah, and like they've got Ripley down, and they're kind of fucking with her, like making it look like there's worse problems than there are.
Yeah.
Right. I first of all, I love that. We'll get into that later. But she's just like, look, you're legally entitled to get a share, and he's like, yeah, but we're gonna get like a whole share, right? And she's like, you look, you're gonna get whatever's coming to you. It's a really weird sort of. I feel like it was a weird 80-yard line, like they didn't get the
Yeah.
audio quite right. But
I also liked it was somewhere around that scene too when like they were arguing about like how can't believe like like you pointed out how they're the reason the ship's still able to fly and they're the ones that are doing all the work but they're the ones that are getting the least amount of pay,
right,
and so they're on the comm with like Dallas or whoever, and
yes,
they're
yeah,
like,
this is it.
how long is it going to take to fix? And then the two of them discuss, and Brett's like, I don't know, probably about 17 hours.
Where it's like,
And
tell him
then Parker,
17
yeah,
hours.
and,
Yeah,
and then Parker gets on the comm and he's like, it'll take 25 hours.
that whole scene was great. Of there's just them like, yeah, because like I get it. Like, and like at the end of the day though, it's probably like they can get that thing up and running in like 2 hours, but they just don't feel like it a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, they
Right.
just kind of don't really want to.
They're like, we're not getting paid well enough. We're going to drag our feet. Look, we've all been there. I work a blue collar job,
Yeah.
right? Like there are
Same.
just those days where you're just like, I can't,
Yep.
it ain't worth it. Like I'm going to procrastinate and I'm going to knock this thing out like at the end of the day and act like
Mhm.
it took all day.
That's right. I hear
We've,
that.
we've all done it once or twice. Okay.
I totally agree, unless my boss is listening, in which case I have never done that ever, not even once.
Right. Same here. And I haven't had the luxury to be able to do that recently because there's just too much shit to do,
That's right.
unfortunately. But yeah, we've all had those wasted days.
That's how it goes,
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked Parker and Brett in this. I feel like I related to them the most this time around. I don't know what that's about, but I was really, really into that. Like when because they're doing their thing, right? They're on the same team. Just to touch on it again, when Ripley's down there and they're talking to this, they've got like steam pouring out of all of these pipes and stuff, and they're talking to her and she's shouting over it and it's blowing all over the place. And they're like, look, we ain't doing any more work until we get this fixed, until we get our pay fixed. And she walks off, and then he just like turns the nozzle and shuts the steam off, and the whole place goes quiet. Like there was like they were just
Yeah.
artificially creating this problem to make it look worse than it was.
It was
You
great.
know?
I loved it. I had a great time on that scene. I thought it was genuinely actually really funny.
Yeah, such a fun scene, and really builds their characters too, and like just narratively, like this is just in a part of the movie where there's not a lot of action going on. We're just seeing the crew interact.
Yeah.
We're seeing the relationships. We're seeing the hierarchies.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels real. It feels like we're eavesdropping on conversations. We're not the dialogue and the stuff. Just the way it's filmed, it's like the camera is, I think, handheld through most of the movie. The camera is always moving.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it just makes you feel like you're just sitting in a room with these people, as opposed to like the conversation being like framed to be these big dramatic exchanges and moments. It just feels like you're sitting at the table having the coffee, which is the only good thing on the ship, with the crew. Yeah. I really love this first half of the movie, and I love all the crew dynamic stuff. I like how weird you get to see Ash be as the movie goes on, as you start to he starts like just getting like gently suspicious, right?
Yeah, he's kind of weird as hell throughout the like beginning
Sure.
section of this movie. And like since you don't know he's an android, you're like, man, what's this guy's fucking deal?
Right. Yeah, we should just pull the Band-Aid off. This towing vessel, the Nostromo, is on its way back to Earth with the huge 20 million tons of whatever.
Yeah.
They are awoken from hypersleep halfway through the journey by a distress beacon, and company orders, their contracts dictate that they have to investigate any signs of life, right? Any distress beacons, any signs of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, as much as Parker and Brett are arguing against landing and everyone wants to just keep going, get back in the hypersleep, finish their 10-month journey back to Earth, etc., they are mandated to land on this planet and check out this beacon.
Mm-hmm.
So, all that to set up, when the ship detached from the big towing thing, like for years, I thought that whole big giant ship,
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing we see floating in space at the beginning of the movie, that was the Nostromo. But no, the Nostromo is just like the cab at the front, and then that's like the towing, like the cargo, the freighter in the back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool ship design. But it was always bugging me why they were talking about escaping in the shuttle when I was like, wait, why is there a shuttle? And then there's other thing. Like, it just took me too long to figure out that the shuttle is attached to this thing that we see land on the planet. Like, they took the whole ass Nostromo down to the planet, not just like a landing vehicle, I guess is my point, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I believe like they refer to it as like, the shuttle or the land or whatever. But like, I think the shuttle actually is like the livable like spaceship part
Oh,
of the Nostromo.
well, I'm thinking the shuttle is the little thing. The shuttle is what she escapes in at the end. That's
Oh
the,
yeah, you're right. Duh.
the,
I
the
got
yeah.
confused. You're right. Correct. Yes.
That's what I'm
Sorry.
saying is that it is confusing because I thought the whole
Yeah.
thing was a Nostromo and then there was a lander and a shuttle, but the thing I thought was the lander is the Nostromo,
Yeah.
right? And then that has a shuttle on it also.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
yes. You're right. Now I'm getting what you're saying. Yeah, I got
yeah.
confused there for a second. Sorry.
So they take the ship down and they have this kind of rocky landing, right? All we really see is like one of its like landing feet get sort of bent by a rock that it lands on. It's just not level soil, right?
But
But
then somehow that causes like a whole bunch of like electronics to go out and some
sure,
small explosions and like they get knocked to the floor and all
right.
that. And yeah.
Classic Star Trek,
Yeah.
fires. They got fires. They got to put out all kinds of stuff. Like it's kind of crazy, like how much shit goes wrong from that landing. And I don't think that much actually went wrong. And I think that it was largely, Brett and Parker kind of playing things up as part of this weird negotiation tactic to like, try to show their worth, try to show that they deserve more shares
Yeah.
or something,
Who knows?
But I noticed something. The whole reason I'm giving all this context is I noticed something. You said that Lambert is the navigator, right?
Yeah.
And we see Lambert, like, she's doing the countdown as they're landing. Like, the landing procedure is an all hands on deck situation,
Mhm.
but she's doing the navigating, right?
Yeah.
So when they land and this problem happens, there's then this moment afterwards where Dallas is talking to Kane and Ash, and they're talking about the atmosphere and going out to check out this beacon and all this kind of stuff. And they're just kind of out of focus in the background. And we are focused on Lambert smoking the cigarette, right? Like she's like up in focus in the scene.
Yeah.
And like I was like, oh man, like I've never picked up on this before. She's feeling shitty about the landing. Like she's the navigator and she brought them down here. Like is she feeling like this is her fault? Does she feel responsible that they've now taken damage on this alien planet and it's going to be 25 hours before they can take off,
She is certainly looking very nervous and twitchy. And like while the three of them are talking out of focus in the background, she keeps on like taking the cigarette out of her mouth and then like nervously glancing over at them during the conversation and then just like stares at him for a second and then just goes back to smoking again and just does that over and over and over again.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. It was cool. Like it was a performance I've never really focused in on before, Like I primarily remember her just being panicked through the last half of the movie.
Yeah, and plus, like, it's also really cool to be like, the important part of the scene, like, narratively, is the three of them discussing what they're going to do, but the stylistic focus of the scene is her listening to them have this discussion, and it's just, like, a visually interesting way to, like, frame this information, Yeah.
It is, because, like, you feel like she's over there feeling bad about the landing, right?
Yeah.
She's also being left out of this conversation about what to do next, but I maybe she feels like they're leaving me out because I fucked up. But then she also gets volunteered or told by Dallas that she's part of the team that's going to go check out the beacon, and then she's not enthused about that either, you know. So you're just getting this, like, you really feel like you're outside the conversation the same way that she was. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just a really cool scene, really cool character moment that I really dug. This movie's I'm just gonna say it. It's pretty fucking good.
It's good, man. Alien is a good movie. But yeah, since you mentioned it, I will point out that just for the people following along at home, the landing party is all of them, but
Right.
the people that actually go out, because like the whole reason they're having this discussion that there's three of them that are going to go out is
Yes.
because when they land, they discover that the source of the signal is only about 2 kilometers away, i.e.,
Yep.
close enough that they can walk there. And so Dallas decides that himself, Lambert, and Kane, of course,
Right.
are the three that are going to be like the group that goes to check things out. And so that means that leaves Brett and Parker there to finish the ship, which is why they're going out to explore. Basically, they're going to have the time
Right.
anyway.
They got
And
25
then,
hours.
and then Ripley, since she's the warrant officer and therefore third in command, she's kind of like, you know, the acting captain while Dallas and Kane are gone.
Yes, and Ash stays behind as well. The totally
Yeah, because
human boy named Ash.
That's right. Ash is kind of like, he's like, his role in this section of the movie is to kind of like be the monitor and like the guy in communication
Right.
with the three that are out walking around on the planetoid.
So we got to talk about this. This is the beacon, LV-426. This is the planetoid next to the LV-223. It's the moon next to LV-223 from Prometheus, right? And I did see in this, when they're approaching the planet, you do see all three moons. So, you know, when we talked in our Prometheus episode where I felt like it was a retcon that they just added another moon, like clearly there were three moons in this as well, unless this was some kind of George Lucas style, like, you know, revision to the movie. Because again, I couldn't watch my DVD version.
Yeah.
I had to watch the digital copy. So I intentionally wanted to watch the DVD. The second time I tried cleaning the disc to like watch it on that, just to look for this, just to see if there were still three moons. Cause like, I don't remember it being that way, but it must have been. This must be right. But anyway,
Yeah, probably.
I've just gone off on 37 tangents. You informed me during our Prometheus deleted and extended scenes, our Weyland-Yutani files episode rather, that, Weyland Corporation had knowledge already of the beacon, right?
Mm-hmm.
The distress signal, all the way back in Prometheus. In what year is that? 2080 something, right?
93 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and now we're all the way in the year 2122, and so the executive order, you know, that Ash is aware of to return the organism for analysis, right?
937, I believe it is.
Yes. We'll dive into that. I guess we should dive into it now. I mean, it's the reason that we named the podcast what we named it, right? Executive Order 937, Priority 1, return organism for analysis. All other priorities
rescinded.
All other priorities rescinded. Crew expendable. This is an order he must have had, like, this must have been planned.
Yeah, it certainly was.
From before the Nostromo left Gateway Station or wherever they left, right?
Yeah.
Before they left Antarctica, according to the original screenplay, right? So Ash was put on board on this freighter run. This freighter run was put on this path to go past this planetoid, this planet, and this system, right?
Correct.
The Zeta 2 reticuli system. Ash had full knowledge of this the entire time. So once that beacon wakes everybody up, once everyone is woken up halfway through the journey by that beacon, Ash is now in this mode where he is trying to engineer the capture of this creature, right?
Yeah.
They know about the creature, I guess, thanks to David's messages, right?
Presumably, yeah.
And information. And 100-something years later, they're finally doing something about it or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, not 100 years, I guess, actually. Not 100 years at all. Only like 50 years, right?
Yeah, I would say like 40 or 50, actually.
40 or 50 years, right? Yeah. So
I'm good at math, so don't worry about it.
Yes. Yeah, whatever. So So all of the things Ash is doing, because they're looking at the planet and they're like, oh, what's the atmosphere? He's like, oh, this so. It's like it's breathable, and they're like, it's dark, and he's like, oh, the sun's gonna come up pretty soon. Like he's doing all of these things, like these subtle manipulations that you kind of pick up on later, right? It's a really, really good performance from Ian Holm because you don't really suspect anything until you suspect something,
Correct. Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
It's cool and I like it, but it's just interesting to think. I don't think I've ever really thought like, oh no, they didn't pick up the distress beacon and then Order 937 got sent to them. Like he knew the order from before they left. This is always been there.
There is a scene where Ripley and Dallas are talking in one of the tunnels later on where she's like, where the fuck did Ash even come from? And he's like, I don't know. He was assigned to the ship. It's like the company suddenly just assigned him to the ship 2 days before we left. Like Ash was put on board this ship on purpose, specifically because the company knew they were going to be going by 426 and that there was a xenomorph on there. Like he was put there on purpose, and this was the plan from the very beginning.
It's really cool because like I think I always thought of this in a vacuum of just they're just kind of like, yeah, it just sort of happened, right? They discovered this thing and then the company got involved and was like, let's use our robot to make sure we get this thing, right? Not that it was so specifically premeditated by the company. It worked. I think it works either way. I think it's really, really cool that they put that much stuff into it just based on how the franchise goes from here on out, right? With Wayland Yutani, colonization and like all of the stuff we see in the rest of the franchise. The seeds for that really were present here. It wasn't something they came up with for the sequel, which is kind of what I had been operating under like the whole time. Like I thought that the implication was that this was how Wayland discovered that this thing might exist, or like the company order was just an all the time order, not specific to this mission. Like it was just like a thing, like a sinister thing they had in their back pocket, not.
I mean, it could be that, but the way, like when I was watching it, it registered to me as they planned this.
100%. That's what I'm saying. Is it registered to me that way too, and I think that that's definitely the intent.
Yeah.
Versus how I have been operating my whole life, where it was like, oh no, like maybe they really were innocent in sticking the colony on LV-426, right? Of course, special edition kind of shows you that they're not. But the theatrical cut of Aliens, like you could buy that, like you could believe the people in the boardroom in that movie,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a revelation that I had watching this, I guess, this time and I think specifically with the context of coming off of, maybe that's the benefit of watching Prometheus and Covenant ahead of this for me, is that it got like, it made me sort of pay attention in different ways. I don't know.
And what's wild about that entire subplot with turns out Ash is a plant and like it was done on purpose and everything is that, both the character of Ash and the role he serves in the narrative literally didn't even exist in the first few drafts of the movie. Like the character was introduced in one of the later, like way later on drafts. And I don't remember which of the credited writers it is that like added it, but the other one is like, I'll be honest, I still think that's actually a really stupid idea. Like the way it's done in the movie is the best possible version that like the best possible way that idea could possibly be done. But at the end of the day, I still think it's kind of stupid. And I think the movie is worse off for it. And like, I'm sitting here, because since I'm not one of the writers, I have the distance from the creation of the movie to be able to go, I don't know, man, like Ash's whole thing, that's like one of the parts of this movie that is like iconic,
Sure. And it's
like,
and it's
that is one of the things this movie is known for doing,
Right. And it's like one of the genuine, like chilling parts of the movie also is that reveal. Like it's very, very effective. Well, let's talk about the scary parts. We're going to talk about the monsters last, and I think that includes Ash, right?
Works for me.
Yeah, I want to talk about the set design. I want to talk about the Nostromo itself because, like, if you really think of, I mean, like that's like the eighth crew member. You know, the ship
Yeah.
is like. Well, I guess the eighth crew member is Jonesy the cat. So
Yeah, and you could also make the argument that the ninth crew member is the alien. So
sure. Well, the eighth crew member is Jonesy. The ninth crew member is the Nostromo, and the 10th is the alien. I like that.
also,
Yeah.
there is one thing I'd like to point out real quick. It
Yes.
really fucking threw me off since you mentioned Jonesy the ship cat. It fucking threw me off to discover that his name isn't Jonesy, it's Jones.
Mr. Jones.
The cat's name is actually Jones, and
Yes.
he's called Jonesy because that scene when he runs off and Brett has to go find him, he's like, "Hey Jones, here, Jonesy, Jonesy, Jonesy," and so the
Yeah.
name just kind of caught on to the point where, like, I was sitting there like thinking the cat's name was actually
Was Jonesy.
Jonesy, but no,
Well,
his name is Jones.
Ripley calls him Jonesy and Aliens also. It's just a fun little, we do
Yeah.
that with animals. We never, I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't call my dogs by their actual names. I called them nicknames almost
Yeah.
exclusively.
Yeah, pretty much.
You name a dog or a cat so that you can then nickname it. That's the
Correct.
reason you do it.
That's
you
how
know.
it goes.
So I like Jonesy. I guess while we're on the subject of Jonesy, was Jonesy? We didn't see Jonesy get out of a hypersleep pod with anybody, but presumably it was tucked in at like Brett's feet or something, right?
Yeah, I don't actually at the beginning, I'm not sure actually. I don't yeah, like you said, I don't think we ever actually like see where Jones was.
Because
I mean,
we only
when
see John hurt. We only see Kane get up out of the hypersleep.
yeah,
and we
like
cut
the
to everyone
scene
else
like
being
the
up.
scene cuts away just as everyone else is like starting to twitch and
Yeah.
move, but he's the only one we ever actually like see up.
It's really
Yeah.
interesting that it's him first too.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just-
See what they did there.
Yeah.
Thematic relevance.
But what do you think Jones's role on the ship is? I have a theory.
Mhm.
Do you have a theory?
Yeah, he's there to like chase down rats and stuff.
Yeah, that's 100% it, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I've heard other people be like, "Why'd they bring a cat in space?" And I'm thinking these things are huge. They spend a lot of time like docked, like boats, shipping like freighter ships have
Yeah.
rat infestations.
Yeah.
So
he's pest control, yeah.
Jones is a mouser, totally. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm glad we're on the same page as that. I've
yeah.
heard people been like, "Why is there a cat?" Because there's mice.
And I mean, admittedly, part of it is probably because since they were going to be, out there for years, they
Right.
probably wanted to have like, an animal on board for like,
Sure.
comfort and entertainment and stuff. But as far as the actual like role, it's because there's a cat because they're expecting to have like mice
Right.
and rats and stuff. Yeah.
And they do sort of like not particularly seem to care where the cat goes. Like it is
Yeah.
it's not an emotional support cat, I don't think. I think it is strictly a mouser, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ripley seems to be the only one with actual concern for the cat,
She certainly is. Yeah.
She's the one who like thinks like, "Oh shit, we got to save the cat at the end." Right? Everyone else
Or
is
like
just,
how like how there's a jump scare where they're searching for the alien later on in the movie and they look in the vent and Jones jumps out
right.
and then like he runs away and then Brett's like, "Oh, it's just a cat," and just lets the cat run off.
Right.
And then I believe it's Ripley and Parker that are with him and Parker's
Yes.
like, "Go get the cat," and Brett's like, "Why the fuck would I want to go get the cat?"
Right. But and Parker's not even like, "Go get the cat to keep it safe." He's like, "Go get the cat. Otherwise, we're going to pick it up on the motion trackers again." Like,
yeah.
we
Otherwise, they don't care. Yeah.
Like, this is going to happen again if we don't catch the cat. We're going to catch we're going to keep thinking we're finding the creature and we're going to keep finding the cat. Go get the cat, Brett. Yeah, they don't care. They don't care. It's a company, I guess maybe it's a company. It's a company cat.
Yeah, whatever. Who knows what kind of share that cat got?
Sure, right. Yeah, probably more than Brett and Parker.
Based on how much they fucking bitch about it over the course of the movie. Yeah, probably.
But I do want to talk about the ship because I think that the Nostromo is it's cool, man.
Oh yeah, man. I even have real early in my notes like the first scene when they're like uncoupling the lander to go land on 426,
Yeah.
and there's that like wide shot of like, you know, the actual lander splitting off from the like the umbilical arm or whatever.
Right.
And I even have written in my notes, fuck, the model work on this movie is just so cool looking.
The miniature work is great, and that part in particular where it separates, that really does feel like a truck cab separating from its
Yeah,
trailer, right? Like it
for
really
sure.
is. Like they knew what they were designing. But the interiors are great. Like you can see some Star Wars influence, right?
Hmm. I
Clearly
did too.
in the way like the hallways are shaped and just sort of the
Yeah.
sort of general like lived in feel of the whole place. But I think the production design took it to a level that like we still don't get in Star Wars, because Star Wars wanted everything to still feel pretty darn alien.
Hmm.
And this wanted it to feel like, so you've got bowls and you've got coffee cups and like recognizable objects from like our society just like
Yeah.
littered all over the place. You've got the bird, the drinking bird, right? The little
Hmm.
thing that like
I
tips down and pecks, and
I even notated that those were theirs. Like, there's a pair of them set up on the table when
yeah,
everyone's still in hypersleep, and I was like, huh, I wonder if Ash put those there. I wonder
sure,
why
right.
he put them there.
Yeah. And what's funny, it's we'll get to it when we get to it, but the ship you wake up in Alien Isolation is the same class as the Nostromo,
Mhm.
right? And it's
Yeah.
also full of drinking birds, like they're everywhere. And I'm like, okay, nice nods, but like, do we need to make this like exactly the same as the Nostromo? Like, come on, like, were these
Yeah.
standard issue on this M
Appa-
class towing vessel? You know,
apparently.
like it comes with they're like hard bolted to the tables, to the surfaces, and if you remove them, the ship won't fly through space anymore.
Correct.
Yeah, but like I understand that they really they wanted us to feel like we were on the Nostromo. They wanted to give us that
Hmm.
in Alien Isolation, and I appreciate it. And they actually do in that DLC content, which we're going to have to cover too.
Sooner or later, yeah.
Yeah, too scary for me to play. I'm not gonna lie, I've tried.
Yeah. I
Freaks me the
mean,
fuck out,
like, I
dude.
know we're not talking about, I know this isn't our isolation episode and we're not
Right.
going to talk about it, but since we did bring it up, I will say right now, it is the scariest fucking video game I've ever played in my entire life.
God damn it, it's fucking terrifying. And
Yeah,
those
it is absolutely fucking terrifying, Doug.
the Nostromo DLC packs also. I forget the name of them, Lone
Yeah.
Survivor is I think the one that's like recreating the end of the movie, and then there's another one where you can play as any of the crew members and you're trying to trap the thing in the vents. Like
Yeah.
it is too scary for me to play. I tried playing it once. I think the alien, like I tried to hide under a table from the alien and it ran in and got me, and I shot it with a flamethrower and it ran off, but then came right back and killed me, and I never tried playing it again because it was too
Yeah,
terrifying.
it is absolutely
Yeah.
horrific, man. That game is like however scary they wanted to make it, somehow that game came out even scarier than they were planning. It is
Yeah.
terrifying. But
It's
anyway, we're not here to talk about Isolation yet. We will
yes,
be
no.
doing an episode on it probably sooner rather than later, but we're not
Yeah.
there now. So,
Not there now. One thing, so I love the way the Nostromo looks. I love the technology in it also.
mhm.
Like I love the cockpit, the readouts and stuff like that on the screens. Obviously all like the analog sort of clicks and noises that the computer stuff makes, right?
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
all looks very, very cool. I love the mother interface room.
Yeah, I like that too.
That is like,
It looks very Cerebro-y.
yeah, like classic sci-fi tropes. And I love that there's, you have to like remove a card from a protective glass case and then insert it in order to gain access to this room, like insert it into like this server rack. And then it's like this, just like this clean room with these like 4 monitors on the wall and these LED lights everywhere, and this Professor X style chair,
Yeah, it looks cool.
It's really, really cool. And then the readout is just the green text on black.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me, and it doesn't bother me about this movie, like I think it makes sense, right? Like Mother clearly has a lot of top secret information in it. Only certain
Mhm.
people are granted access to it, right? They
Yep.
keep it really, really regulated. So all of that like weird tech stuff makes sense for me. Like, oh, maybe this is how they keep this stuff hacker proof, right? It's a separate network. It's not something that can be tapped into. Like if you want to access this information, it's the only way. It's like a skiff room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes sense. That checks out. Okay.
Yeah, it worked for me.
What doesn't work for me is how advanced and slick they made the tech in Prometheus and the inside of the ship in Prometheus, and to a lesser extent, but it was still present in Covenant. I think Covenant works very hard to bridge the gap between the tech we saw in Prometheus and the tech we saw in this, but it still just doesn't, there's still a separation. Like the cameras we see in Covenant, right? When they're tracking the Praetomorph at the end, way better resolution than the cameras we see in this when they're watching, you know, Kane's body shoot out into space, right? Like
I mean,
there's a huge difference.
True. It is possible to explain it away if you want to nitpick, because like, you know, Covenant is like a super high tech, like super fancy, really expensive ship, whereas the Nostromo is just some bullshit fucking tractor trailer, you know?
Right, I understand, but the issue for me is like, you know, you see it now, right? You see it with people who own campers. There are people who bought campers in like, or trailers in like 1980, 1990 versus modern campers and trailers, right? And you can look at it and you can be like, okay, well, that's like a 1980s camper. Like I can tell from the shape of it, the body shape, the furnishings inside, all of that stuff versus a modern one. And this has the look of like a 70s, 80s style vehicle inside, right? Like a camper.
Agreed. Yeah.
But it wasn't manufactured before the other stuff. So it's like we have to believe that they intentionally designed a ship with inferior technology less, like that is less than the standard at the time when they made it, right?
Fair enough. Now I see what you mean. Okay, yeah, I get you.
It's like we have to buy in this world that they intentionally made it worse, like for whatever reasons. I don't know, like because I mean, it's just, you know, I got a phone in my hand right now that has more processing power than Mother. You know, like
yeah, that's true.
And that's it's just I don't know. I wish like I would have bought it in the universe. I would have been fine with it if the technology we had seen in the prequel movies to this hadn't been seems like so much more advanced than what we saw in this. That's all.
I believe that's a similar problem that people had when the Star Wars prequel movies were coming out. They were like, these movies seem a lot more advanced tech than the original ones. Yeah. And I was just like, I don't know what to fucking tell you, dude. It's made by the same person. So what are you going to fucking do, you know?
Right. Well, that you can explain because then, you know, there's a different government, right? It was just a different society. Like after the prequels, like the Empire took over. So then the story is getting shifted to people trying to survive under fascism, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So the Star Wars thing always made sense to me because I was like, wait, no, because like now we're looking at the rebels who are like trying to scrap and salvage and fight back, and like the people on the fringes, not the people in the big cities. Like I'm sure Coruscant or whatever still looks fucking great, right?
It probably does, yeah.
Under Empire control, right? But yeah, the rest of the world doesn't. And Tatooine was always a shithole. Yeah, I'm not a Star Wars guy. Sorry.
I mean, I'm not anymore. I kind of used to be, but I've since gotten out of it. So
yeah, I got everything I was going to get out of Star Wars in that original trilogy, and like I've seen the rest of the stuff, and I'm like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. But like, it's not gonna. It doesn't mean anything to me like the originals did.
Fair enough.
Know? And I think that's fine. Like you can get
nothing wrong with that.
Like, I think I got everything out of the Alien franchise, out of this movie and Aliens, you know, and the rest of it's fine. Anyway, yeah, I like the ship overall. Like, I really like the ship. I like the style of it. And I think maybe my big gripe is I wish they had just leaned more heavily into that when they did the prequels. Like, I would have loved to see this style resurrected for Covenant or for Prometheus, you know. They sort of like beige paneled walls and stuff.
Instead, we had to wait till Isolation came out to get it again.
Right. And then they were giving us exactly the same thing. But I think Isolation
literally exactly, yeah.
But I think they do a lot of work there to like bridge the gap. I mean, it makes sense that some of these freighters and stuff, it's just going to be utilitarian, right?
Yeah.
Like we got to minimize, you know, not a whole lot of luxuries. We got to kind of minimize weight, or I guess you don't even have to minimize weight if you're in, I guess for fuel reasons you would, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it makes sense that there's some kind of a, efficiency model that they have to stick
Mhm.
to for these deep space salvage missions or hauling
Yeah,
missions. But still, the
still, yeah.
the Prometheus was just a little shiny for my tastes.
But anyway.
Anyway, we also get to explore a Juggernaut, the crashed derelict ship in this, right?
Mhm.
And boy, it is a lot bigger than the Juggernaut we explored in Prometheus, isn't it? It
It
feels
sure is.
it feels humongous inside. Like, do you think it's a different class? Do you think it's like a larger class than what we saw in that? Like, do you think it's actually a different model?
Well, we do see it externally,
Right.
and it still has the same shape and looks
Right.
the same as
That
the juggernauts from Prometheus and Covenant.
that
But yeah,
crescent
the
moon
ship is
shape.
like, yeah, with all like little knobs on the ends and everything. And yeah, like it definitely looks the same. It's the same like style, but yeah, this one definitely does seem a lot bigger. But
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I don't know if you'd give it a different like class designation though,
Right.
because if it is like the literal same design but just larger, I don't
Sure.
know if that would make it like qualified to be a different class of ship or not. Like I don't know how, the engineer structure works like that, so who
Right.
knows? But
They just like supersized it, you know?
yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Because even the engineer or the space jockey, the fossilized dude in the chair, right?
Mhm, mhm.
The pilot, as I think the Giger art described it as, looks larger than the engineers we see in Prometheus, right?
Oh yeah, this guy is real big. Yeah.
And this is the scene where I think they had to build that model like to scale, and then to make it look larger, they had children in the spacesuits. I want to say it was Ridley
Mhm.
Scott's children, but it might have been somebody else's, to really help give it scale. And maybe that just threw it off a little, but like the space jockey looks gigantic in
Yeah,
this.
he's a lot bigger. I mean, they have gone on record in like some of the supplementary material that
Yeah.
engineers can get really big and their average height is a little bit taller than a human, but
Okay.
this guy looked like he was probably like 10 feet tall, something
Yeah,
like that.
his head was gigantic when Dallas is up there like really investigating like the wound, the
Yeah,
ribs
like
bent out
yeah,
wound.
the hole in that pilot's chest, like the hole that the xenomorph came
Uh-huh.
out of is like the size of a character's head.
Yeah, you could stick your head in the chest burster hole,
Yeah.
presumably. Right.
Yeah.
Um looks fucking rad. And this is an area where I do think that they pulled the right stuff for Prometheus in terms of like engineer tech, right?
Mhm.
Juggernaut interior architecture. Like I love that stuff, and it was cool to see this, and that was something that they were faithful to in Prometheus, which I appreciated, even if there's some size and scale changes.
Yeah.
Just cool to see this old fossilized, and this ship has been here also for a very, very long time, right? Like the
Mhm.
engineer has gotten sort of fossilized into mummified and fossilized into into the chair, you know.
Yeah.
And between that and the beacon allegedly being something Wayland Corporation knew about long before Alien Covenant,
Mhm.
really proves that the xenomorph was just banging around out there prior to
Yeah.
David's experiments. Thank God, right?
Because that's another thing. Speaking of the beacon, just real quick, may I remind you and may I tell the listeners if there's anyone out there listening that doesn't know, partway through the movie they discover that the beacon is not an SOS like they thought it was.
Yes.
They translate part of it and turns out it's actually a warning to stay away.
Another great scene where Ripley's running, or Ash is monitoring the expedition, right? And
Mhm.
Ripley runs the thing through, and she calls Ash, and she runs the thing through Mother, and she calls Ash, and she's like, Ash, Mother's translated part of this message. I don't think it's a distress beacon. I think it's a warning. She's like, I'm gonna go out after them and let them know. And he's, why bother? I mean,
Yeah.
by the time
No
you
re-
get there, they'll know,
yeah.
which is a terrible,
It's a terrible reasoning to
yeah.
not do it, and it's one of those things where before you know the twist with Ash, you're
Uh huh.
like, That's not a very good justification. And then after
Right.
you find out why, you're like, oh, he's actively been working against them since literally the very beginning. Got it.
Right. It throws some suspicion because the other thing he could have said is like you're the warrant officer. We need you on board.
Yeah.
We've got we've got repairs and stuff going on. We can't have the entire all of the top ranking crew just go out.
Yeah, the entire command structure just gone, yeah.
Right. I feel like he could have done something like, well, according to the rule book, right?
Yeah.
One of the top 3 ranking officers needs to stay on ship at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah. But whatever,
Whatever. Whatever.
Teed you off a little to him being a suspicious character, so it worked for that. The egg chamber. So they're in the cockpit, right? Of the Juggernaut, presumably the pilot, the space jockey in the piloting ship that we saw in Prometheus.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hole in the floor that looks like it was burned through with acid, right?
There sure is.
Yeah, they set up a winch, and John Hurts, I'm just going to call him by the actors' names.
Kane. Yeah.
Kane rappels down into this humongous egg chamber, gigantic, right?
Yeah, it's super, it's like several American football fields.
It's huge. It's bigger than the entire Juggernaut we saw in Prometheus. So,
correct.
but is this a part of, like, this is my questions, right? Like, we don't know that this Juggernaut ship necessarily crashed. I guess it looks crashed, right?
I mean, the pilot is clearly dead and still fossilized into the chair. I assumed it crashed,
Right. And he was also able to, like, send a distress beacon, though, or somebody was. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, do you think this is part of the Juggernaut, or do you think this is maybe another engineer facility that the ship kind of crashed onto, like landed on top of? Or
that is an interesting theory. That never occurred to me. I mean, I'm having the idea right now for the first time when you bring it up to me. The entire time I had just thought it was part of the ship.
Right.
Because it's clearly like engineered, no pun intended, but it's clearly like handmade and not like naturally occurring.
Right.
So because of that, I just assumed it was part of the ship. But yeah, maybe it is like, some kind of like, on ground facility that the ship kind of like melded with when they crashed into each other. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never thought about that before, but that is kind of a good point.
My thinking is, like, what if the Juggernaut, like, it was just bad timing? What if it was docked here, a creature got loose, the guy got impregnated, didn't realize it, the pilot tried to make the escape but wasn't able to, like, try to just like flee the planet, but then the chest burster happened. He had no idea it was coming. Yeah. And then, like, the ship just didn't get to take off. I have no clue. The only reason I started thinking about it is just because the discrepancy in the scale versus what we saw of Juggernauts in Prometheus, and the fact that in the original, I think, screenplay, it wasn't really meant to be a crashed ship. It was meant to be like a pyramid, like a structure, like a built structure that they find.
Correct.
So yeah, it kind of makes me wonder if, like, originally, even though they put the derelict ship in there, if maybe it was just supposed to look like a ship, but it was just part of a big complex or something. I really don't know,
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
I mean, I will say that it is a little bit, I don't want to say suspicious, but a little bit unorthodox, a little strange, beggars the imagination to believe that this ship did in fact crash, but is still like wholly intact. you know?
True. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they were able to get in, they were able to get in somehow, but I think they've just found an open hatch, right? Like,
yeah, that's correct. They just found an opening in the side and walked in.
Yeah. So who knows? But it's but the egg chamber is pretty cool, right?
It also has this one other feature that as far as I know, does not come back in any of the other movies. There's this weird electric blue mist covering up all of the eggs.
Sure, and it reacts when broken. Like, you hear like a hum or something. And who knows, like maybe there was a bigger part of that system. I think that returns in some of the games
All
that
right.
missed, like in some of the Alien versus Predator video games. What do you think the mist is there for?
I assumed, I don't know. I figured it was some kind of like force field that like keeps them alive, but in some kind of like stasis
Right.
until something comes along to break it, indicating that there is something that the face hugger can latch onto. But
Sure.
like where the force field came from, I'm shrugging, you know?
Okay. Yeah, I think that there's definitely something to it, like keeping the environment like preserved within the field, right? Because
Because like, that fucking space jockey, he's like fossilized.
yeah,
He's been there for like hundreds or
hundreds
possibly
of years.
thousands of years.
Sure.
And so like after all this time, those face huggers and those oomorphs, well, at least one face hugger anyway, is still alive even
Right.
though they've been there for thousands of years.
Yes.
The only reason I can think of that would even be possible is that blue mist is some kind of like force field that keeps them alive but in
Right.
stasis, because like also that facehugger doesn't even start moving until after he approaches it and starts prodding it and stuff,
Yeah.
leading me to believe that the thing wasn't even awake until he came up to it, you know?
Right. Yeah. And when he got close to it, it started like we saw the humidity start to build on it, almost like it looked like the jars in Prometheus that were sort of eroding when
Yeah.
they changed the temperature in the room, you know? So it
Yeah.
seems like it seems like some kind of a climate control system for sure. I'm thinking it's less a field that's there to alert the ovomorphs that there's something, and more a field to alert the engineers or whoever if one of them escapes, if it jumps, if it breaks the field, right?
All
Like
right. All
it's
right.
probably sending a signal back somewhere that they can, read on their, that maybe it plays a flute song or something, right? Like,
Which also thinking about it now,
yeah,
yeah, maybe it could. But that also thinking about it now is also valid explanation for why the blue mist never really comes back
sure,
after this. You know,
yeah,
because like the other times that xenomorphs and ovomorphs show up, they're not really connected to or
right,
tied to something that involves engineers really, you know?
yeah, and like even on the engineer ship in Prometheus, they don't have any xenomorphs, at least not that we saw.
Yeah. So
They've got jars of pathogens, so they don't need oh, I guess that ultimately they did need a fail-safe system for an outbreak of that stuff,
yeah.
but they didn't think they did, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that if they're transporting live creatures, that they would want that security. So what do you think happened then? Do you think one of these things got loose and worked its way up through that hole in the floor, like into the command chamber, or like because there's an opening there, or do you think that the space jockey or whoever got infected in a different way, and whatever burst out of his chest then tore that hole through the floor back down to the egg chamber? That's probably the more
I
likely scenario, right?
I mean, when I was watching the movie, the way the backstory that is shown to us but not given to us, like
Yeah.
the way it jigsaw puzzled together in my mind
Uh-huh.
is that the space jockey, when he was still alive, had been probably infected, like, while they were loading up the eggs,
Right.
but like maybe they didn't know how it worked, or maybe he was able to successfully hide the fact that he got face hugged or whatever,
Sure, yeah.
and then they loaded everything up, and then he got on the ship and was ready to pilot it, and then before it took off it busted out and killed him.
Right. He was like the new guy. They didn't tell him what was going on.
Yeah,
Like
pretty much, yeah.
let's haze the new guy and then
Yeah,
fucks
let's haze him by
everything up.
having him get infected by a face hugger.
I
Wouldn't
just
that be a funny practical joke?
I want to be extremely clear with something right now. I don't want to know the actual answer. I do not want an alien movie that shows us what happened on this crash derelict ship before Alien. I don't fucking want that. I
Same.
like being able to theorize and just think about, like, I like the mystery aspect of it. I don't want a Damon Lindelof to come in here and answer a bunch of these questions and then also set up a bunch of other shit I don't care about. Like, I like this mystery aspect to it. It's fun to talk about. So I'm hoping we don't, like, I guess actually it wouldn't be so bad if we stumbled across some like old Dark Horse comic that did answer this.
I'd be fine with that, but
That'd be fun to read, yeah, as an alternate version, as
yeah.
a theory about what happened. Like, it's obviously not going to be canon. I mean, we see other interpretations of what this space jockey creature is in other media, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't line up with Prometheus.
I may have made this comparison before because as it was starting to form in my head, it did
Right.
feel kind of familiar. So I may have even said this before on a previous episode. But to me, the story of like what happened with the ship that they, go visit on 426 is
Uh-huh.
kind of like at the end of the movie The Mist, when that huge gigantic behemoth alien comes strolling down the street,
Right.
and like they realize, oh, like, there's so much more here, this is so much bigger than we thought. Like,
Yeah.
whatever happened to this juggernaut kind of registers that like in the same spot in my brain that does, in that, like,
Yes.
what we're seeing here is just a tiny, tiny fraction of some massive thing that's like so big and expansive that we can't even fully wrap our brains around precisely what's happening. So just
Yes.
showing us these little tiny, Lovecraft style glimpses
Oh, yeah,
into
man.
the beyond, the amount we get is all the amount I need, because any more than that, you'll just be belaboring an explanation that when you
Yes.
hear it, you're like, you're trying too hard to connect all the points. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. The fact that we're seeing that this stuff is it just existing in this world is the scary part too. Like,
Yeah.
that's the
Like, this
that's the
is
terror.
designed exactly. This is designed to be incomprehensible. So any comprehension you give it, by definition, doesn't make sense. You know?
Totally. Yeah, it is. And just the fact that, like, it's this derelict alien ship. The monster inside, the pilot, the alien inside it has been fossilized and been there for possibly hundreds of years, thousands of years, who knows? And there are these creatures inside this thing that it was clearly transporting that are still active and can still attack humans. Like, that's scary. That's all I need to know to be scared.
Yeah.
That's the reason that this scared me as a kid, even though this is a movie that takes place hundreds of years into the future, right? It still hints that, yes, this movie takes place in the future. This horror could be existing in our present day, and it just hasn't gotten to us yet. Like, that's scary, right? Like, that it could just be on, like, it could be on our fucking moon, like,
Yeah, exactly.
who
Who knows?
knows?
Yeah.
Right, that shit could come back like the symbiote in Spider-Man, and suddenly be infecting people. Like, yeah, that's what's scary. What's not scary is, no, a robot 200 years in the future is going to make these things in a lab on a planet far away. Not scary.
Lame.
Not
Yawn.
scary. Not scary,
Yeah.
dude. Sorry. What's scary is, no, this shit's just out there, right?
Yeah.
And has been for hundreds of years, thousands of years, since the beginning of time. Who knows? That's the Lovecrafty, and that's the eldritch horror of it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. God. Let's talk about, do you have anything else to say about environments before we move into the actual talk of the monsters?
Actually, yeah, I do. I'd like to talk about their shoes for a second.
Those Reeboks, or I guess she wears Reeboks more in the sequel, right?
Yeah, she wears Reeboks in the sequel. In this one, they're all wearing shoes that look a lot like high top Converse All Stars in white.
Dude. Yeah.
And I used to be a big Converse All Stars guy. Those were the type of shoes that I wore. Then I eventually started wearing other ones because, like, every time I would go to the store, no matter what size I needed, they would never have the exact size I needed.
Right.
And so there were like 4 or 5 pairs in a row that I went through that didn't quite fit right. So I started buying other stuff. But like, when I was going through the movie, I thought they were, wearing modified Converse.
Yeah.
But the farther you get into the movie and like you see the characters walking around, there's even a shot of somebody, I think it's Ripley at one point. She leans back in a chair and then puts
Yes.
the shoe on the console. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh shit, those aren't Converse. Like, I thought it was like, I thought they were like, you know, originally supposed to be like, or they were originally intended to be like modified Chucks or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But like, as it turns out, I did a
Are,
little bit of research.
are
I
they
like,
like,
you know, looked through some photos
are they like
and
CVs or something?
they're it's most likely
Uh-huh.
that because like whatever the basic version of shoe was that they used, they still did modify them for the movie. There is no shoe that you can get just off the rack that looks like these, but it's more likely that they're modified PF Flyers center high tops,
Okay.
not Converse All Stars, because the the center highs that PF Flyers make have like the rubber toe cap like
Yes.
Converse does,
Yep.
but they have the little horizontal grooves in them, which is something that Converse does not do, but the PF Flyers do have that, and they still have the two eyelet holes on the inside. They have an ankle patch like Converse does, but these ones don't have that, so presumably they were taken off. But
Okay.
the white PF Flyer center highs also have the little thin blue and red stripes around the top of the side of the sole, which is something that Converse doesn't do. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure these are modified center highs made by PF Flyers, not modified Chuck Taylor All Stars.
Okay.
So
For all the sneakerheads in the chat, I'm actually really into that. I'm glad you looked that up. You reminded me of something that I noticed watching the original Terminator, that I believe the shoes that Kyle Reese steals when he comes back in time are in fact Nike Air Force Ones.
oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice.
High
I
tops.
I sh- I should say, just for all the listeners, I'm not a sneakers guy. I couldn't give a shit less about like, you know, good looking shoes or whatever. The only reason I even noticed
Yeah.
that is because I used to wear Chuck Taylors all the time back in the day. So
Right.
when I saw that, I was like, "Oh snap, are those Chuck Taylors?" And then upon looking at them, I was like, "No, actually they're not. But I wonder what they are." And
I
so
think
that's
you're
why I looked that up. But
I think you're 100% right, because it's got like the ridged toe, right?
yeah.
Like
Yep, it
around. Yeah,
certainly does.
you're
And then yeah,
absolutely
like I
right
said,
about that.
the like where
I
the
look
soles are. Yeah, like where the soles are on the side, Converse has like a black stripe and
sure. Yep.
PF Flyers have thin blue and
Thin
red
blue and red.
stripes, and
Yes.
these ones in the movie have the blue and red stripes.
I
So,
zoomed. I'm not a sneakerhead. I appreciate a cool shoe,
yeah.
right? I absolutely zoomed in when Ripley's, yeah, she's sitting in the chair
Mhm.
on the bridge, right? It's when she's translating the message and she's got her feet up, and you can absolutely see these you are absolutely right. These are PF Flyer center highs,
Yep.
100%.
That's what they
That's
are.
yeah.
I'm like I said, they're still modified because, like with Chuck Taylor's, center highs still have like the normal ring eyelets, and like
Uh-huh.
these ones have like D-shaped eyelets that are like set outside of the shoe
Okay.
rather than built into it. So again, there
Yeah.
are some modifications,
Sure.
but the base shoe they used is a center high by PF Flyers. I'm pretty sure.
Very
So.
cool. I should get.
Yeah.
I might get a pair of these. I wonder if these have more arch support than your Converse, because man, I had to stop wearing those because it just
Yeah, I hear that.
it just walking on anything other than perfectly smooth terrain sucked.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much.
Yeah.
They were definitely a shoe that is very much designed to play basketball in,
Right.
and that's about it.
It's a good shoe to wear if you're going to go to the mall for half an hour. Not a good shoe to wear to Disney World. You know,
Correct.
learned
Yes,
that one
correct.
the hard way. Anyway, anything else on, like, I guess we could just talk about the style in general. Styles off the fucking charts in this movie. Love everybody's
Mhm.
looks. Hairstyles
Oh
are
yeah.
great. Clothing
Yep.
choices are great. Parker's headband rules. Uh,
Mhm.
Dallas's beard. What a handsome man. Love them all. Everyone looks great in this
Brett's
movie.
Brett's always wearing a fucking Hawaiian shirt, which is just a fantastic look in a movie like this.
Brett with his Hawaiian shirt and hat. Like, yeah, I love everything. Oh, that's something environmentally I want to talk about. That room where Brett is searching for Jones, where he gets got.
Yeah,
they're in this gigantic room with all of these chains hanging
just
down.
hanging there. It's the room where there's hanging chains. That's what the point of the room is. That's where you hang your chains.
But there's this moisture like raining down also. Like he drinks, like holds his mouth open, like catches water in his mouth, drinks it, washes his face off of it. It's dripping down really hard on his hat. Like, what do you think this room is? Because I know that there's a deleted scene where his kill by the alien was much more visceral, where blood then rains down on Parker and I cannot believe I dropped her name. We talked about her,
Lambert,
Veronica Cartwright. I just want to say all their names, the actor names. Parker and Lambert. I was like, what is this room for? What are all these chains hanging from? I have a theory, and maybe this is something that's been answered somewhere else. Maybe it's in like the alien technical manual, some book or something somewhere. Is it like are we like under the cooling system for the ship? Because like that's what they're going to overload for self-destruct. Is it they shut off the cooling system for the ship? That's the self-destruct sequence. Is it related? Yeah. Is it related to that? Is this like a moisture, like a moisture farm? Like, do they use humidity and stuff like that to generate water for the journey? Gray water for flushing toilets or washing things or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, does it have a practical purpose, or is it just a cool room full of hanging chains? Right.
I truly have never even thought about it. Every time I watch this movie, I was like, oh yeah, it's the chains room. I never really thought about it beyond that, like, at all. So truly, because like, here's the thing, like, what functionality does that room have? Don't know, because we never see any of the machinery that's in it. Like, I mean, we see it. We see like the tubing and the computerization and stuff, but we never see any of it actually doing anything. So who fucking knows what the point is,
There's some like construction vehicle parked in one of these rooms, maybe adjacent to that one or something. There is cargo like down there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I thought, and like the chains made me think of like, people have like rain chains on their gutters that sort of direct where the water runs,
Yeah. That's another thing though, like whatever it is that's dripping that Brett stops at, like, why? Like, it wasn't dripping into anything. It was just dripping onto the floor,
right?
Which leads me to believe that dripping was not on purpose, so.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Like, was that floor a grate, or was that floor pretty solid? Because
I know they show it, but I wasn't paying attention to that specific aspect of it, so I don't really remember.
I didn't know if it's just like dripping into like a big vat or something, right? And
maybe. I don't know. That's a good point. I didn't really think about that.
Maybe it is some kind of gray water that's used for the cooling system, or like recycling into. Who knows? I a little bit want everything to feel deliberate in the movie. Like, I need to be okay with it just being a cool room that looks cool and is a good setting for an alien murder, right?
I mean, that's how my brain processes it. Literally, like, he goes in and I was like, there he is. He's in the chains room again.
Yeah.
It's the room where they hang chains up. That's the point of the room as far as I'm concerned,
Okay, folks, we're going to pick this up with a part 2 very soon. In the meantime, follow the show on Twitter at CrewExpendapod, crewexpendable.net, subscribe in your podcast app. Follow Kenny on Twitter at CYHOBBEZ. Follow me at Final Neal with an A, and we'll be back soon to talk more Alien 1979.